I've been married for nearly 35 years and only now discovered that my husband, Evelyn, has been having an affair with our neighbor, also named Evelyn, for over 2 years. I am utterly devastated. Welcome to the Butterfly Tumblr Radio channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. I've been married for nearly 35 years and only now discovered that I had a side piece for the previous 2 years. I am devastated. A picture transcript of the letter. Dear Isabel, I'm writing to inform you that your husband, Evelyn, is having an affair with a neighbor of yours, Evelyn by the name of Evelyn. They've been sleeping together and having an affair for more than 2 years. They meet in your community's pool and dog park. They frequently spend weekends together, camping or staying in various hotel rooms. I felt you should know what was going on and why Evelyn had gone so far. I've also seen him drop off your dogs at her home. Nobody should have to find out about an affair this route. I apologize. I just thought you should know now. Throw away the post. Obviously I've been married nearly 35 years. Yes, to the same individual, and while it hasn't been ideal, it's been fine kids, dog and white buddies. I've got them. Our personal life have suffered slightly. On my wedding night went from being a virgin to pushing myself to please him sexually. I was supposed to wear it on Saturday. It will be 6 years since we were intimate. For a long time I assumed he was having an emotional affair with his male friend, whom he had fished with but had been ill with cancer, because he would drop everything for him, including our plans for him. Plus there were a couple texts that, although not sexual or more than friendship, left me feeling wounded but not threatened. I knew he was very unwell. There is no physical relationship happening. His time is short and once he had this out of his system, he and I would be back to normal. His wife. I sincerely apologize if my words sound crude. This is not how I want them to sound, but after he died, my husband would come back to me. So I was gone for the previous week puppy sitting and house sitting for my sister. I arrived home last night to check my mail. There was a blank envelope with everything typed inside. It was a short note picture of above. I know who the female is. It is one of his friends. I am totally devastated. To me, a lady is more difficult to compete with. What has she got? What if I don't? I decided to get healthier and lose weight. I've shed more than 130 pounds. I haven't heard anything from him. I went to the doctor last week, dressed properly, and he told me I was embarrassing him since his wife was roaming around town like a with her tits hanging out. I was dressed somewhat off the shoulder, in white eyelet and dark denim. Since discovering this, I've become fascinated with collecting evidence and I stalk Facebook. Their call logs. He phones her an average of 68 times each day, each call lasting 5 to 10 minutes. I'll drive by her house. I will type and remove her name, phone number and address. I wanted to confront both of them. I blame her. I blame him. I wonder what she has. I do not. How do I repair this? Do I want to correct it? Does he? What do I do? Where do I go? How? I've been crying for 2 days now. I can't tolerate looking at him and I'm terrified to speak to him. Here is some further information from the op. I am unable to edit my post. Part of the reason for the lifeless bedroom was the medical drugs we were both prescribed for our libidos owing to blood pressure, diabetes and depression. Medication disrupts your body's natural processes. I chatted with my doctor, changed my clothes and drove home. He did not. There wasn't much I could do to adjust his medication, but it's clear I don't do it for him. Now let us get some pertinent remarks from the op. The op responds to several inquiries about the length of her marriage and children. 100 Real. I am quite irritated and I apologize if my grammar is not up to par. I haven't gotten much sleep the past few days. This year I will be 54 years old, having married when I was 19. The first child is 20. The following children were born in 1993, 1998, and 2004. And yeah, this was done with my phone. The question was whether the letter she received was genuine. I hope this is real. I am real. My life, children, grandchildren and animals are all real. Our lack of libido is real medical difficulties that made it a reality. Etc. Our image, phone number and his call log. My phone has a file with his address and a snapshot of her house and automobile. Real therapy for her and her husband's ethnicities. Yep, a white woman married an Asian man. You have been married for 35 years from virgin on your wedding night to Managa. What a journey. And now your husband has decided to go on an extracurricular trip with the neighbor, who treats the dog park and pool area like their own personal love nest, classy, and who you are losing 130 pounds, or attempting to revive things, only to be called unflattering names for displaying a bit of shoulder. What a charmer. He's more interested in calling his neighbor 68 times every day he notices his wife's alteration. You receive a typed letter from a mysterious insider spilling the beans on this 2-year romance. That's some Desperate Housewives-level drama, and you're left wondering what she has that you don't. Perhaps she is a dog whisperer, or she simply has an impressive collection of pool floaties. Remind him that you are no longer the naive 19-year-old who said I do 3 and 2 decades ago. You are stronger, wiser. Quite frankly, too, it's fantastic to be anyone's second choice. Please update one of the comments below. So after a few days of crying and feeling horrible, I became obsessed with gathering additional information. Mind you, this all came to light last Sunday, when I was still in a condition of ignorance, so I began reviewing phone logs, making 6 to 7 phone calls to and from her per day, each lasting 20 to 40 minutes. I had a typo my first post. I looked into his office and nightstand. I'm not sure what I was looking for, but I wanted something I'd drive past her house when he left. In other words, I was going insane and broke down on Wednesday. I was weary of his, appearing as if everything was normal and nothing was going on. I couldn't take it anymore and first wanted to speak with her, so I took off in my car and drove to the dog park, which was deserted. So I drove to her house, beating on the security door and ringing the doorbell. She's got a ring urging her to open her effing door, and if you're a lady enough to date a married man, you should be able to communicate with his wife. This carried on for about 5 minutes. She didn't respond. I texted my husband that we needed to talk and that I know my sister is on the phone with me, attempting to calm me down and persuade me to leave her house before the cops arrived. What about the 3 minutes? Yes, he shows as someone from our community. It took me some time to get home. She not only called him, but also forwarded him the video, so I confronted him considerably. He gaslit me throughout the conversation. Get your buttocks into the house. I can't believe you did something so effing foolish and then turned it around on me. You're usually sitting on the couch until your sister invites you out, and he doesn't deny being with her. It is none of your concern. When asked if he would stop seeing her, he refused to give her up. She's a close friend of his and the biggest smack in my face. He wants me to apologize for embarrassing her in the neighborhood, and I guess she's planning to file a restraining order against me. So I ended my pity party on Thursday and Friday, and on Saturday, I began doing things I never expected to have to do on my 35th anniversary. I contacted a divorce attorney. They were closed, but they did fill out the consultation forms. I've also started a resume and I'm applying for employment, but after not working for almost 20 years, what kind of career will I be eligible for? This weekend I stayed with my sister. I needed a change of scenery. After his attitude, the cancelled anniversary and the strange vibe, I needed a break. So you visit her residence, start hammering on her door like an action hero, demanding 10 minutes of this, and she's probably hiding behind the sofa clutching her pearls. He blames you for everything, does not deny the affair and simply says it's none of your business. Oh, and he expects you to apologize to her for embarrassing her in her neighborhood. Is he duded or simply evil? Possibly both. By the weekend you're at your sister's house attempting to regain your sanity, and who wouldn't want a break after dealing with that degree of absurdity between his arrogance, the botched anniversary, and the overall funk? You've earned some peace. Your husband and his close buddy can enjoy their little fantasy while you write a new chapter for yourself. Update 2 in the comments. So it's been approximately a month since I learned about his affair. It still sucks and I would like to communicate that, and I'm absolutely over him. But one cannot turn off feelings like a light switch. At least I don't, and sometimes I believe we can fix this. But then he goes all a hole again, and I'm back on track with my plans and ambitions. So I've established goals for myself and have been working towards them. My first one got a job. I was a homemaker for 99 of my marriage. Not only did I acquire one, but I discovered too that I can work simultaneously. I made a my name secret account and am storing all of my extra money there. He has strict control over the entire household budget, so I'm going to have to get inventive. He knows about one job but not the other. I returned to school to get a degree that is relevant to what I do. So far, everything is going well. We are staying positive and moving forward, even when he's negative towards me. You're going to quit. You will fail, etc. I'm saving for a modest place, preferably a smaller or an apartment that will accommodate my small dogs. Once the apartments are lined up, then I'll file for divorce. I need to make sure I have a safe location to leave, because he will turn ugly once served. So far, things are quiet here. I don't ask about her, despite the fact that they still speak on a regular basis, and are most likely in our neighborhood. It's as if he's rubbing my nose in it. The trouble is I'm not letting him know or notice that it bothers me at all. This in turn is causing him great distress, so he threatened to take away my phone. Okay, fine, I went and bought a cheap burner phone. Just in case he does so. He switched to being pleasant. He has purchased components for my automobile, paid for labor, and provided me with scrubs and equipment for schoolwork. He asked for a list and purchased it. There are times when he is kind. I believe there is hope for us. As long as she is in the picture. Nope, then he turns back into the buttocks, making hollow threats and undermining my confidence, and I'm back to counting the months till I can move. Update 3. I'm currently on the phone and have just worked an overnight shift, so I'm fatigued. So we are in June and a lot has happened. Some are good while others are not. I eventually broke down and told my children these are really difficult calls to make, and I told them everything. I accepted responsibility for my actions and realized I could have done better. My elder children said not perfect. I tried my best with what I had, but that did not justify his cheating. My oldest wanted to come out and play a couple rounds with his father, confronting the other women. I told him it was not worth it. My second son is a thinker. He did not speak much, but you could see he was deep in contemplation. The third son remarked it was about time, but how he spoke to and treated you. I hope you're considering leaving. I was genuinely undecided. He would alternate between saying I want to work on us and fix us and acting differently, and my last 2 weeks have been the worst. So, because he has been using my son's automobile. My son installed a tracking device. Yes, I can access it and no, he is not aware of it. He would tell me he was going somewhere and then go directly to the other woman's house, and when I asked where he was he would lie to me. I simply took notes on it till I couldn't anymore. On Father's Day. I had worked the night before I got off work at 8:00 a.m. I texted him what he wanted for supper. That night went to the shop, got everything, came home, began cooking and tried to snooze. Mind you, he did nothing. On Mother's Day, he wakes me up to borrow 40 for a trip to the sports goods store. So I said okay, dinner's in an hour or an hour and a half. Please do not be late. 2 hours later, no return. I checked the track. He went directly to her residence and did not move. So I go for a drive-by. His car is currently parked in the garage. She has parked outside. So I returned home. I'm more upset for my son. I text him. You need to come home. We need to talk. I am not familiar with the sports store. Nothing. After 30 minutes his automobile hadn't moved. I called her. Of course she does not respond, so I leave a voicemail. I know my spouse is at your home. You won. I am done. It's clear. He wants to be with you. I am tired of the facades. His ball. He does not desire someone who has loved and battled for him for 35 years. I am done, come get his dog and his belongings. You have won. I hung up. 10 minutes later he enters with a Walmart bag and claims to have gone to Walmart. Then a friend prepared tacos for him. I served my son and then tossed away the rest of the dinner. He gives me an attitude because he feels intimidated since I phoned her. She now needs to change a number, and in her area of work she will lose customers. I did not threaten her. I told him that if he didn't like being here, he could always leave. He was invited to utilize it. He was quiet all week, but was also a jerk and is just interested in seeing that woman. I had melanoma removed. I needed a driver, so he drove me when I got into the car. Not a single word. No, how are you? How did it go? Are you okay? Nope, all he said was I am hungry. My sister died of melanoma 30 years ago, and it was the anniversary of that, so I was really sensitive. Little things were gradually building up. He was forgetting items I needed or had requested. When our son's birthday came around, I was at the bottom of his priority list. He couldn't even wait for him to extinguish the candles before heading to her residence. So on Sunday he was rummaging through the kitchen cabinets, pulling out some soup and saying he was going to take it to this couple, who had been stranded down the road for a couple weeks in a broken-down RV. So I get a few more items and such, and he leaves leaving a bag of stuff on the counter. I verify, and yes, he went straight to her house. This was the last of our vitality for this marriage, so I messaged him again. I don't see why you have to lie. Bunker Hill has no dog park, hiking route, fishing location, sports goods store, broken down RV or Walmart. Why not be honest and tell me you are heading to her house? Whatever you say, it's evident that you don't want to work on your marriage. You have chosen her over your family and are centered. I tried to calm down when she did not respond. I texted her. I didn't expect you to answer. Not even 5 minutes later he is screeching in the driveway, crashing into the house and yelling what the F is wrong with you. Effing, mother, effing B. I'm sure if I'd been in the same room as him, he would have hit me. I informed him that I'm weary of him lying to me. Just tell me he's headed to the house. He's been going the entire time, and is still lying about it. And doesn't he think I'm wondering where he is? I remember, he called me some derogatory names and ignored me the remainder of the evening. I'm sure my neighbors enjoyed it. I went to file for divorce yesterday Monday, and received bad news because he has a 1099 employee, but hasn't worked in nearly 2 years. Although my bills are paid, I'm not on his bank accounts and have never been. I've always had to ask him for money, and 3 years ago he refused to let me file his taxes because they were too hard for you. If I filed for divorce right now and requested alimony, he might instantly file for a smaller amount and the judge would agree. My lawyer advised me to wait 3 months before filing because he is now working, which began this week, and submitting paper bids, so I'm supposed to gather as much proof as I can in the interim. He was impressed with what I had thus far, so I'm planning and playing it cool till September. Here are a few related remarks. One community member stated, "I know this hurts now, but you'll be better off without a parasite sucking the life out of you. I don't know anything about this, but I believe you should seek a second opinion from another lawyer." 199s are still considered proof of income. They appear to have the authority to subpoena those, as well as his entire tax record, which he may not have submitted. The OP responds that he has his own firm and the entity through which he subcontracts sends him a 1099. I haven't seen a tax return in 3 years because we file separately. I try to peek when he's at home, but his workplace is disorganized. I'll keep looking, though, since there has to be something dopey on why she requires his alimony. Her children are grown and she now works. Nope, he says I started back at work 2 months ago. I spent the most of our marriage as a housewife, caring for him and our children. My youngest son is 20, but he has unique problems and is mentally around the age of 12. When I first learned about the affair, I would have done anything to get him back now. No, I do not want him back. I deserved better. The Open secures all of her legal documents. All of those have since been transported to a safe location. Back in April, the OP explained why she is waiting until September to file for alimony. I've come this far, and if I left now, I wouldn't be able to support myself and my son in a decent environment, even with my job, and I deserve it. After everything I've done, including cheerfully caring for his mother and assisting his business in running the house, among other things, I simply want what is fair to provide a safe environment for my son. According to the lawyer, the difference may be between $500 and $400 each month. Ballpark figures here, although there was a significant difference. A few more remarks from the community. Can we get back to who wrote the letter? Who knows the husband and mistress hired a hotel room and went camping together? That is unusual. The specifics another individual joins in. They live in a small village, so I'm guessing the gossip mill is wild. That being said, it's intriguing that the letter references hotel rooms and camping. Despite the fact that during the months she tracked the car, he never left the affair partner's house. I'm surprised you've remained up for so long. It's upsetting that he's still talking to her and trying to shove it in your face. Then there is Father's Day. Despite all your efforts, he lied about his location and headed to her residence. You called him out. He throws a tantrum and you realize your marriage is dead than disco. His sole concern was that she changed her phone number and lost clients. What a prince. The melanoma surgery was a big kick on the 30th anniversary of your sister's death. He showed no empathy, not even a "how are you just? I am starving" priorities right. Celebrate your son's birthday. He couldn't even wait for dessert before rushing to her place. Unbelievable. Finally, there was the soup incident. Clemmy is assisting stranded people while also returning home. It is almost laughably pathetic. So you text him the truth and he loses control, calling you names and ignoring you. The neighbors probably had a popcorn-worthy show that night, but here's the kicker. You began the divorce process. Sure, it's a waiting game, but you're accumulating evidence and playing it. Well, by September you will be prepared to make your move. With any luck, you'll receive a fair settlement and a fresh start. In the meantime, keep being that feisty mama who is juggling jobs, returning to school and saving for a new life. He could believe he has won, but the true victory will be yours when you are rid of the harmful presence. Here is the next story. Dad, this is Mom. Pete grinned as he accepted the phone from his daughter. He knew what the conversation would be about, but he was delighted to speak with his wife for the first time. That morning, his wife Jones asked, "Hey, baby, can my sweet teddy bear supervise a dozen teenagers today?" Eva and her friends had been preparing this for weeks. "I only need to follow their directions. They are either 19 or 20, not toddlers." She asked, "Did you put up the pool the way she wanted?" He responded, "Yes, and the lounge chairs, bar and grill. The food is prepared. I did all of it while you were away next year. You can chaperone. Don't tell me you aren't looking forward to spending the afternoon surrounded by a dozen teenagers in bikinis. You'll be ready for me when I arrive home. Remember, one of them is our daughter, and the other two are essentially surrogate daughters. I don't need a dozen bikini-clad youngsters to be prepared for you. I am always ready for you. I understand and I like it. Have you had a good trip?" She asked. "We did. It was a worthwhile learning meeting." She responded. For over 6 years Joanne worked as a senior financial advisor for a mid-size investment business in a Nashville suburb. "That it's amazing. Honey, have a safe return trip from San Jose." "Thanks. I will meet you later this afternoon. Love you, Joan." "I love you, Pete." Eva rolled her eyes at her father, but she was relieved. Her parents still loved each other. Pete recalled how he had been her lover till the children were born. Then daddy till their oldest child went to college. Now he was her teddy bear. He did not mind. She enjoys snuggling next to him and napping with her teddy bear. Pete, his daughter and her two best friends had been busy preparing for the party. Eva was beginning her junior year of medicine at Vanderbilt University, approximately 20 miles from her parents' home in Franklin, Tennessee. She resided with her best buddies in an on-campus apartment. Her best friends, Lily and Carrie, stayed the night and assisted that morning. Lily, a tall slim African-American with pale pecan skin and beautiful curly hair, teased Pete about being shorter. He enjoyed having her around, since she was like another daughter to him. She was a scholarship track athlete at Vanderbilt University, where she also studied mathematics and computer science. Carrie, my first primary school buddy, enrolled in Vanderbilt, thanks to her parents, financial resources and connections. Despite her SAT scores at 5 feet 2 inches. I'm a small blonde. In high school, she was voted the most likely to purchase an island beneath the backyard pavilion, an outdoor kitchen that Pete built. The table was set for lunch. Friends would arrive any minute. It was a beautiful August day. Eva, who inherited her mother's organizational skills, kept her father busy. Pete, who was more modest than pompous, had founded and ran his tiny consulting firm. If the girls' fathers were to vote on the best dad, Pete would most certainly win. After serving meals and drinks, Pete stated, "All right, ladies, I'm going back inside. Let me know if you require anything." Lily remarked, "Are you certain you don't want to stay and eat with us?" "Thank you, Lily. This is for all of you. I'm good." This afternoon was for the girls. Pete remained busy in his office, which overlooked the pavilion and pool when the females began to remove their cover-ups. He went to the den to watch the Braves game, avoiding the impression of being creepy. After around 20 minutes, he heard a ruckus near the pool. While investigating, he seen a muscular young man grab Car's wrist and tried to drag her away. Her buddies encircled them and yelled at him to stop. Pete hurried outdoors yelling, "Hey, let her go." The guy around 6'3" smirked and continued to drag Carrie, who was much smaller. As Pete approached, the guy pushed Lily, causing her to collide with Pete, recovered and dashed to block the gate. "Let me go, Ricky!" Carrie yelled. "Girls, get back." The other girls took a step back, but did not move very far. "Some are filming the situation. I said let her go." Pete shouted. Ricky, undeterred, attempted to jab Pete, who ducked and struck Ricky in the solar plexus, prompting him to release Carrie. Pete then struck Ricky in the groin, knocking him to his knees. "Get out of my backyard," Ricky slowly rose, frightening Pete. "You aren't as huge as my father said. I'm going to like this." Ricky swung again, but Pete avoided and tripped him, knocking him to the ground. "Just leave. I do not want to hurt you," Pete murmured as the females giggled at the sight. Ricky insulted Pete, referring to him as a small teddy bear. Ricky lunged again, but Pete, who was now infuriated, avoided and landed a series of punches on Ricky's side. Ricky collapsed and took his time getting up. When he did, Pete wrenched Ricky's arm behind his back and led him out the gate. Ricky, now in pain, teased Pete about his wife. Pete disregarded the taunts as lies, threatening Ricky if he persisted. Ricky smashed on Car's car, denting it before sliding into his BMW and driving away. The females were recording and gesturing at Ricky. Pete informed them that the show was done. "Return inside and please do not share that video just yet. Let's talk about it first." Pete heard. Eva exclaimed, "Daddy, your nose is bleeding." Lily swiftly took charge, instructing everyone to make way for Pete on a chaise couch under an umbrella, even fetch him a clean shirt. "Carrie, get a bag of ice." She helped Pete sit down and pressed his shirt on his nose. The other girls, taken aback by Pete's fitness, enthusiastically offered assistance. Though Lily kept things tidy. One girl got him a drink, and another attempted to help him lie down. The rest talked about what happened while glancing at Pete. When Carrie and Ava returned, Pete applied the ice and inquired, "Who was that idiot who raises people like that, Carrie? What did he want from you?" Eva answered, "That is Ricky Farmington, the son of Andrew Farmington, Mom's boss." Pete's concern intensified. "Oh crap." He realized the accusation might be true. Carrie explained. "He invited me out again after one date, but I declined. I am sorry he came here. He probably learned about the party through social media." She begged with her pals, "Please cease posting about our plans." Then she questioned Pete, "How did your nose begin bleeding?" "He never touched you." Pete said, "It occurred when I attempted to catch Lily. She bumped into me and shot my nose." He grinned at Lily. "I'm very sorry, Father. Whenever he pushed me, I did not mean to bump your nose." Pete reassured her. "Do not worry. It is not broken. Just saw Lily." I was relieved. Pete expressed concern about the videos. "Please do not post videos of what occurred. No social media emails or messages, please." "Why, Daddy, you did nothing wrong?" Eva asked. Pete explained, "I do not want rumors about your mother to spread," said. "Also, Ricky may respond if the footage is released. He could be dangerous and intend to harm one of you." Eva asked, "Will you call the police?" Pete nodded. "We don't have to press charges right now, but he assaulted Carrie and Lily attempted to assault me and destroy Car's SUV. I'll have someone take our statements. You can continue to enjoy the festivities by the pool." He asked Carrie, "Is your wrist okay?" "Yeah, it's only a bruise. Nothing serious." Pete nodded. Carrie then asked Mr. C where he learned to fight like we. "Ricky is a huge guy who has won numerous battles. It's quite dull." "Are you certain you want to hear this?" A dozen bikini-clad girls nodded enthusiastically. Pete shrugged. "In high school, I was taunted for my height. My parents are both short, so I figured I wouldn't grow very much. I ran track and cross-country and performed well in state finals. As a junior, I went on a date with a pair of guys who mistreated us. I attempted to ignore them, but they pushed me. My buddies stepped in and the guys left. I told my father, who located a martial arts studio for me in Knoxville. He advised, be the best you can be, but only for defense. I trained twice a week until college at Georgia Tech, where I continued to learn many techniques, including Charlotte Judo and Jiu-Jitsu, with a concentration on self-defense. The instructor, an older man of my height, and his daughter Ava's size, were superb fighters. I trained beside them for 4 years. When I married Joan, we moved to Atlanta, and I did my training to once per week. Ava, when you started college, I discovered a nearby studio and resumed studying. I'm not as good as previously, but I get by. Ava stated, Daddy, I never realized you didn't have to remember when we took you and Danny to Paris while you were in 7th grade. We went to a Moroccan restaurant in a gloomy neighborhood. I did not want to attend because it appeared risky, but your mother insisted on our way back to the car. 2 guys, one tall and one small, approached us from behind. I gave your mother the keys and instructed her to escort you to the car, started and honk once inside. Eva nodded. They yelled for us to stop. You told Mom to drive us to the car. Yes, the tall one took out a knife and demanded money. I pretended I didn't want trouble, but I seized his knife and stabbed his knee. He yelled. The short guy drew his knife, but I also disarmed him. Their companions began running towards us, so I dashed to the car. Your mother had pulled onto the street ready to depart. I jumped in and we rushed away. That was the only other occasion I had encountered something like this until today. Pete did not tell them the entire truth. He and Joan went out dancing in Atlanta shortly after Donnie and Eva were born and before coming to Nashville. Joan's ex, Bobby Taylor, and an Atlanta Falcons player approached them. Pete was furious when Joan accepted his dancing offer, even though she hadn't given it any thought. Later Pete followed Bobby to the lavatory where Bobby mentioned missing Joan. Pete was not having it. When Bobby attempted to push past him, Pete threw him to the ground, dishonoring him. Bobby's career deteriorated as a result, and he was ultimately traded. There were no charges filed. Pete addressed Eva and her pals. Please do not spread the video. There should only be 13 copies, including mine, and no more. Pete hoped the girls meant what they promised. Forget about that idiot. Lily remarked, you mean he is, and Pete grinned while the females giggled. He walked inside to call the cops. When the officer arrived, the girls hastily covered themselves and described what had occurred. The officer examined Car's wrist, which was red but not severely wounded. Pete's nose had stopped bleeding and Car's mother had come over. The talk lasted 30-40 minutes. After the police left, the celebration resumed. Carrie hugged her mother and watched as she left. Eva asked Pete and Dad, can we stay here until we go to Car's? We had planned to go dancing after supper, but we prefer to dance here tonight. Of course. Eva, I adore having you here. She hugged him and went back to her pals. Pete caught the final inning of the Braves game and they were losing. He received a text, plane is delayed. We'll be home late. He sighed, uneasy with Ricky's statements. Pete danced with more of his buddies, who attempted to teach him the electric slide. Much to their amusement. Around 10 p.m., they left for Car's. Pete received hugs and thank yous from the girls. He was cleaning up outside when he heard the garage door open. Joan was home. He assisted her with her suitcase and she embraced and kissed him. I missed you. How was the party? It was intriguing. I will inform you in a minute. They've just gone for Car's. I thought they were heading out to dance. They chose to dance here. Did you watch them from the inside? She teased. No, Lily took me outdoors and I danced with the majority of them. If I wasn't so exhausted, I'd take care of you. Pete wasn't in the mood either. Let me get your bag inside and pour you some wine. I have quite the story to share. Joan, curious, followed him inside. She sipped her wine while he sat across from her. She snickered as she said, "This must be serious." Pete described the incident, excluding Ricky's comments. Joan was taken aback when Pete disclosed the ascent name as Ricky Farmington Andrew's son. Joan was in astonishment. No way. Pete said there must be some mistake. Clearly, Andrew forgot to teach him certain stuff. Joan giggled. Wait, you got Ricky out my hubby all 165B punch the tank. What is the joke? She laughed, finding it difficult to believe Pete wasn't amused. Joan sighs with a dissatisfied expression and says, "Oh, Pete, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, but be realistic. How else could he handle it? I'll be there once I finish this glass." She was stunned when he said don't bother. Joan walked to the kitchen and called to him, but he did not respond upstairs. He was not in their bedroom. He was in the guest room. She asked Pete, "What are you doing in here?" "I missed you and wanted to cuddle up with my teddy bear tonight." Teddy bear? He was curious if the nickname was kind or sarcastic. He was too exhausted to protest and said, "I guess we will both be dissatisfied." He shut and locked the door. After a few minutes of knocking and pleading, she departed. She was confused and assumed her spouse was losing his mind. Pete knew she'd sleep late the next morning. Due to her lengthy travel, he questioned if she had even gone on the vacation, which infuriated him. He crept into their bedroom, grabbed his running clothes, ate a small breakfast and went for a lengthy run. 7 kilometers later he returned. Joan appeared miserable. "Mister, we need to chat. I do not think you told me everything." Last night he ignored her and went into the shower, locking the door behind him. After showering and dressing, he proceeded to his office, where Joan waited. Andrew contacted Ricky had blood in his urine and went to the emergency room. Ricky informed Andrew that you shot him from behind and they want to file charges. Pete responded, "Of course he's lying. He is humiliated. Your teddy bear tossed him out." Andrew is quite angry. "Why did you attack him?" "Because he was attacking Carrie. You know the Carrie we've adored like a daughter for over a decade. I intervened when he tried to haul her out of our backyard. Do you believe their tale instead of mine? Do you think I sucker punched him?" Joan said, "I apologize, Pete. I can't believe you could do that face to face." Pete was frustrated. "Do you think I couldn't handle him face to face? No offense, honey, but he is big. Remember Paris? You were being away from the small kid that was after I had dealt with the large guy. This is meaningless." He realized she had doubted him. She proceeded. "Do you realize how tough this will make things for me?" Pete was astonished. "Oh, excuse me, what was I supposed to do? Use a weapon?" He said, "My hands." "Nonsense. I've seen you working out. How could you hurt Ricky with only your hands?" "Thanks for your faith." That was sarcastic. She rolled her eyes. "What shall I tell Andrew?" "Tell him his kid should apologize for carrying me." "I won't. Ricky said he'd done nothing wrong." Peter shook his head. "You must be insane to believe him over your hubby. Did Andrew give you any medicines while you were traveling?" Jones's cheeks flamed as he prepared to respond when a vehicle approached and honked. They were relieved to see one of Lily Carey or her father, Brian, come in a Bentley. The girls embraced Pete and Joan. Then Brian shook Pete's hand. "Thank you, Pete, for watching after Carrie. This means a lot to me." Pete, comfortable with the compliments. "We said we loved Carrie. No way was I letting that go with her. You would have done the same." Joan asked girls, "Could you please clarify what happened? Ricky and Pete are telling me various stories." Eva asked, "You don't believe Dad?" "Not precisely. I only want to hear it from someone else. It all sounds so ridiculous." Pete shook his head and walked inside. He took his laptop and an overnight bag, Brian, Carrie and Lily had left when he arrived, needing time to reflect, and Joan appeared astonished. Pete asked, "So what are we going to do with that idiot? Someone needs to educate him proper manners." Joan scoffed, "And you believe you can do it?" Pete could not believe it. "He's probably furious," Joan added. "I don't think you'll be as lucky next time." Pete's expression shifted from amazement to wrath. "When did you lose your regard for me?" "Joan. What, you are being silly." "My feelings have not changed. I am proud of you, so call me skeptical. Did you know that I have C-level contacts at Fortune 500 businesses who appreciate me? Apparently, I am respected more in my industry than at home. The last couple of days have been really educational. What does this mean not to worry about? I've determined that if Ricky or his father do not apologize to me and Carrie by 6:00 p.m., Brian and I plan to call the police tomorrow. He has to pay for the hood of her SUV. You cannot be serious. I still need to work with Andrew. Perhaps you can persuade him to teach his son proper manners. This could jeopardize your job, but consider how this affects us tomorrow at 6:00 p.m. Alternatively, we will call the police. I am going out for a while." "No, you're not. We are not finished talking. We are finished and I need to be apart from you. I'm heading to Brian's to discuss this. Andrew listens to you, tell him what his child must do to escape incarceration. The clock is ticking. Pete, come back here." He ignored her, walked into the garage, loaded his suitcase into the car, and drove away, leaving Joan angry. Pete had never done something like that. Driving to Brian's, he realized he needed to travel for work, to get away from Joan and discover how connected she was with Andrew. At this time, he suspected she had succumbed to Andrew. Joan, Brian and Pete decided on 6:00 p.m. They'd either contact the cops or wait until tomorrow. Pete went to a motel and worked for the Braves. There is a game going on in the background. Around 5:00 p.m. his phone rang. He had blocked Joan's phone number to maintain harmony. It was either "Hello, baby." "Hey, Daddy," Eva stated. "I am driving back to the flat. Are you close to Vanderbilt?" Eva shared an on-campus apartment with Carrie and Lily. It was a unique arrangement, most likely made possible by a generous donation from Brian, who was affluent and well-connected in Nashville. Pete responded, I'm in the residential residence room 413. I will be there in a few minutes." 10 minutes later, Eva knocked on Pete's door and hugged him hard. "I do not understand, Daddy. Why doesn't Mom believe us?" "She does not believe I can defend my family," Pete stated. Eva replied she should. "I informed her about Paris." Pete shrugged. "Let me guess, didn't she believe you?" Eva nodded with tears in her eyes. "I am sorry, baby. Perhaps Andrew convinced her. I do not measure up." "You do not believe what Ricky said, do you?" Pete wanted to insinuate. Joan was involved with Andrew, but didn't realize he was just talking garbage. He despised lying to Eva, but he didn't want to harm her opinion of her mother. "Do not worry, honey, everything will be okay. I want to believe you, Daddy, but I'm worried." She said, "Do not be, we'll be okay." She wondered if he meant just the two of them, or the entire family. She departed quickly after school was starting soon, and had only a few days left on her summer internship. The next day, Pete checked his home security app to see when Joan went for work. He enjoyed the freedom of operating his own consulting firm, but he found it difficult to flee during a marital conflict. By lunchtime he'd received 20 texts from Joan, most of which accused him of being unfair. The last one said, "You win, he'll arrive at 6. I've left you a voicemail." Pete listened to her voicemail. "Pete. Andrew stated that Ricky would apologize at 6:00 tonight. I'm still unhappy with you for placing me in this situation. We can discuss after everyone has left. Pete rolled his eyes. Somehow it was still his fault. He intended to go to Louisville that night for a client session. Brian and Carrie arrived early to perform some pre-work around 5:45 p.m. Carrie hugged Pete and Brian shook his hand. This should be intriguing. Are you and JN okay? This sounds like a difficult situation for you. We will be. She's having trouble dealing with the image of her little hubby punching Ricky. Brian commented. I'm surprised too, but you always seem well prepared. Thank you, Brian. Hopefully Joan will remember that. If you don't mind, we can wait out here. I do not want Ricky in my house. I wouldn't either. Ricky arrived in a red BMW just before 6 p.m., not looking happy. Joan wasn't present yet. Ricky approached them and said, Carrie, I apologize for Saturday. I was out of line. I missed you and took your rejection terribly. I hope I didn't ruin our friendship. Carrie responded. I'm not sure if we'll ever be friends again, Ricky, but I will try to be polite and friendly. That is the best I can do right now. I understand. Ricky turned to face Brian. Mr. Williamson, I apologize for what I did to Carrie in her SUV. Send us the bill and we will take care of it. He did not seem honest. Finally, he looked at Pete and his contriteness faded. Mr. Clark, I apologize for disrupting the party and barging onto your property. I should not have done that. Okay, Ricky, thank you. I believe we are done here. Ricky strolled back to his car, smirking and mouthing kitty to Pete, who responded by opening his palm, indicating that he required proof. Ricky grinned and drove away. Brian's apology to Carrie appeared real, but not to us. What exactly did he say to you? Nothing significant, just trying to provoke me again. Pete responded. Carrie felt guilty about ever dated Ricky. Brian said, if you need assistance, please let me know. I can hire lawyers for him and his father or arrange for a deputy to shadow him for the weekend. Thank you, Brian. Let's wait for now. I have other issues to address. After dropping off, Carrie informed her parents about Ricky's remarks concerning Joanne. They didn't believe Ricky or hoped not. Brian and Pete shook hands. Carrie hugged Pete as they left. As Pete drove out of his driveway, Joan's automobile approached. He drove towards Louisville without waving. He needs time to figure out his future steps. 10 minutes later his phone rang. He decided to respond, hello, Joan. Pete. Are you just going to the store and returning? No, my customer requires that I arrive in Louisville as early as possible. I will remain there till Friday afternoon. Why are you saying that I only travel every 6-8 weeks? It is nothing. If you had been there on Saturday, you would have seen everything. I am still upset. You took Ricky's side. I understand and I apologize. Has Ricky apologized? He really apologized to Carrie, but lied to Brian and myself. I'm delighted he's not going to jail. Hunes, only a kid. Pete Hunes, a 20-year-old who must control his temper and respect others. Joan sighed. Can we discuss when you get home on Friday? Sure, I will miss you, Pete, Joan. He hung up. Joan was astonished by the way he terminated the call. She believed it would be over soon on Friday. She'd make a wonderful supper and organize a memorable evening. The 3-hour drive to Louisville gave Pete plenty of time to reflect. He believed Ricky knew too much for it to be mere rumors. If Andrew slept with married women, it was not shocking. He told his son in suitable detail. Pete felt Joan and Andrew were having an affair, potentially even in town. After Ricky advised Pete prepare to travel as much as possible. In the hopes of surprising them, he pondered hiring a pie, but ultimately decided to install hidden Wi-Fi cameras throughout his home. He had them sent to his hotel on Thursday, hoping they wouldn't record anything but not liking the chances. It was a long week for everybody. Eva called her father several times and he assured her he was well. Donnie also called once to check on him. Joan cleverly left SMS and voice messages that she loved and missed Pete while he was with customers. He was relieved because he did not want to talk to her. On Friday, he drove home anticipating what might happen, but it turned out better than imagined. Joan greeted him in a lovely dress and shoes, signaling her desire to go out. Pete was cool with that, because it would keep things light until they get home. They went to a favorite eyrie and Joan remained affectionate all night. Despite his displeasure, Pete couldn't help but be swayed by her appeal. When Joan arrived home, she immediately initiated closeness. They didn't get past the family room before she undressed and seduced him. They then continued in the bedroom. Joan conveyed her love and Pete responded. "Joan, I loved you too," though she missed the past tense. She went to sleep convinced that everything was all right. The next morning, Joan, who was already awake, drew circles on Pete's chest. She thanked him for the previous night, and he said it was lovely. She then indicated that she needed to travel to Memphis for a client meeting on Thursday. Pete questioned her unexpected trip, but she insisted it was necessary. She asked whether he was well and he highlighted his planned work trip to Orlando and Savannah. This revelation sparked another round of intimacy, which they both relished. Over breakfast, Joan inquired about their well-being and showed her love, trying to move over the recent unpleasantness. Pete grinned and squeezed her hand, indicating that he too desired it. Joan attempted all weekend and the next week to express her love, not simply via love-making, but Pete sensed the end was close. He put a GPS tracker on her car, and hidden Wi-Fi cameras and microphones throughout the house, feeling bad about it, but wanting to know the truth. On Thursday morning, Joan kissed Pete farewell. "Will you drive your car to Memphis or rent one?" "I will take mine. The employer will reimburse me for the miles and I will be safer driving my car." "Okay, be careful." "I will, baby, love you." "I love you too." A few hours later, when she should have been at their Brentwood office or on I-40, her GPS showed her car near Andrew's residence. Pete's concerns were validated. His marriage was over. He went to his dojo to relax and work out, determined to keep sharp in case he had to confront Andrew. "Thank you again," he whispered. Joan texted him later, stating she had arrived safely in Memphis, but the GPS still showed her car at Andrew's house. Pete planned his fictitious trip to Orlando, hiring a person to inform his wife early Friday morning. He received an email labeled Kitty Bear, with a link to a cloud account containing live and recorded video from Andrew's home. He saw Joan and Andrew undress and make love in the family room. Pete drove to the airport, parked in long-term parking and called Joan informing her that he was going. He then proceeded to the airport Marriott to see the evidence. "Stupid kid," he murmured. Pete didn't need to see anymore. It sufficed to keep an eye on Joan's car at Andrew's residence overnight. He listened to the videos and recorded the sounds of their affair to acquire information. Andrew's voice. "I understand you're upset, but you don't have to reclaim me." "Joan, I know I'm still upset by Ricky's apology. You must maintain control over your little husband. I've been concealing from him as you requested." She lied. Andrew let out a thunderclap. "I do not ask you. Do as I say if you desire the perks." Joan had grown tired of Andrew's control. "I adore Pete. He is a terrific father and husband. I am not giving him up," Andrew scoffed. "Why are you sabotaging my relationship? If you love him, you understand why I sometimes miss being with a large man." "Andrew, it's okay, baby, it is not only your size. When I'm wearing heels, I prefer to be around someone taller than me. I enjoy the feeling of large muscles. Sometimes I miss that, Andrew soothed. Keep taking care of me and I will take care of you, but if you can't keep him under control, I may have to confront him. I'm still upset at him for sucker punching Ricky. She snapped. You won't hurt my hubby. Do you hear me? This surprised Andrew and Pete. Andrew. Okay. Remember, however, who you belong to. That irritated her because she belonged only to her spouse. Also bring Ricky under control. I don't want him to sneak up on me. I told you that the female said he did not do that. Pete hit him fair and square. Andrew laughed that Kitty couldn't possibly strike Ricky. He is not a kitten, but if he is, he's my cat bear. Let me handle him. Andrew laughed. As long as I get to manage you for now. She wondered what he meant by for now. The second interesting interaction occurred following Pete's call from the airport. Joan said he's been gone for a week. Andrew's smile was wicked great. We can now take a couple more days off and continue to screw. Joan responded yes, but not if you continue to be so rough. You will bruise me. How will I explain this to him? Andrew reassured her. You're not supposed to be with him very often. How will he see it? He still notices me getting dressed. You claimed you enjoyed it when I teased him. Andrew smiled. So if we have been making love all week, keep him away for a few days, and he will notice the difference. A chilly bath in 24 hours typically works. Besides, he isn't much smaller than you. Andrew was not pleased to learn that he had taken leadership. I'll be kind as you wish, but not at my house or when visiting your place. I will screw you my way. You mentioned that he wouldn't be returning until Friday night. Joan was worried they had never made love in her house. I am not sure if that is a good idea. If it disturbs you. We will not sleep there, just long meals. Joan hesitated but consented. I plan to phone Pete every morning and night to check in. This confirmed that she needed to break things with Andrew quickly. Andrew smiled, knowing she wouldn't let go of him easily. Pete copied all of the videos from the cloud storage once they left Andrew's house. He intended to destroy the server files, guaranteeing that he had the sole copies unless Ricky stored them somewhere. Pete had numerous calls to make, beginning with Brian. Hey, Brian, this is Pete. Got a sack? Sure buddy, what up? Remember our talk when Ricky arrived to apologize? Yes, Ricky was correct. Joan has been having an affair for a time. Oh man, I'm so sorry. So this is not a social call? No, I need a good divorce attorney. Brian quickly replied, I only know the woman. She can be cruel and vicious or simply get it over with, whatever you prefer. I'll give her your information, and she will contact you today. That sounds wonderful. Also, please inform Mary that I will not discuss this with anyone until I deliver Joan the paperwork next week. Sure, Pete, I am sad for both of you. We have always liked you and Joan. Thank you, Brian. I'm sorry too. I owe you. No, you don't. We've been friends for a long time, and so have our girls. When this is all said and done, I will just be assisting a buddy. You can buy me a beer here. I think I'd enjoy that. Consider it finished. Brian introduced Pete to dreaded family lawyer, Charlotte Steele, who began writing divorce papers that evening. Joan's automobile arrived home, and shortly before Pete went to bed, Joan called. Hello. Peter, how's Orlando doing? It's hot and humid, typical of late August. How about Memphis, Nashville specifically? I got back this afternoon. It is lonely without you. I wish we could spend another Friday night like last week. Yeah, I'd enjoy that too. Pete stated, pining for the days when he believed his wife was faithful. They talked for a few more minutes until Joan confessed her love. "I love you, Pete. I love you, Joan." Pete felt upset after hanging up, but his anger intensified as he thought about it. The next day he returned to the airport, rented a car, and went to a dojo near the opera to practice avoiding his typical haunts to keep his presence in town hidden. He spent Saturday and Sunday sparring and working out. Feeling confident in his abilities, he texted Joan, who texted back. The cameras indicated she was alone at home on Saturday, but Ava stopped by on Sunday, making him upset about the approaching loss of their family unit. His despair changed into determination. "Oh well, you have to live with what life brings you," he reflected, prepared to face the challenges ahead. On Monday morning, Pete received an unexpected call from Brian. "Pete, I needed to call you. Joan contacted Miriam yesterday night. She requested if we might forward her resume to our investment advisors because she believes it is time for a change." Miriam responded. "She would look into it. What are your thoughts? I understand that this does not excuse the affair, but perhaps she is attempting to move away from that a whole." Pete thought about his family and what he intended to accomplish while Joan would never be his wife again. It would be better for the children if she moved away from Andrew. "Yeah, go ahead, the damage is done, but it may make life easier for everyone," Rand responded. "I understand." By Monday afternoon Charlotte had completed the divorce paperwork. Joan called Pete that night to say she missed and loved him. He attempted to return the adoration. Donnie also called and they had a terrific conversation. Pete assumed Eva was aware of what was going on, but Donnie was taken completely by surprise. "Damn you, Joan." Pete felt he didn't sleep well that night. On Tuesday, Pete worked from his hotel around lunchtime. The GPS showed Joan's car leaving her office and going home. His security cameras detected 2 automobiles pulling into the driveway. Pete prepared to drive home, expecting the journey to take many hours. Around 2:00 p.m. Joan suggested we return. "People will start searching for us." Andrew responded, "Don't worry, I own the company. Nobody will question me. They might be wondering about me. I don't want anyone telling my husband why you don't believe he will divorce you." This verified Andrew's lack of interest in anything other than making love. "I do not know, he might forgive a one-time mistake, but not for so long." Andrew said, "You have kept him in the dark for 3 years. You are capable of managing. Maybe if we only saw each other once a month. The past few weeks have been hazardous. I should return to the office." Andrew smiled, thinking about Ricky knowing and possibly participating. Joan was an excellent employee who could be replaced. He felt he had authority over her, knowing she wouldn't face Ul getting back to her. "Hubby." Pete parked down the street and used the Wi-Fi cameras to monitor their activities. Hearing that the affair had lasted 3 years fueled his rage. He checked the security system to make sure there were no sirens or chimes. He crept in and softly mounted the stairs, hearing Joan's appeal. "Come on, Andrew. I need to return to the workplace." Pete entered the bedroom and yelled, "That means get the hell out." Joan was surprised, pulled the cover over herself and shouted, "Peter, I thought you were in Savannah." "This," Joan responded. "This isn't what it looks like, Pete." "That's the stupidest thing you've ever said." Joan's face flushed red. "Good," Pete remarked, "at least you have some shame," Andrew teased. So the small man decided to discover how a genuine man cares for his wife. "Don't worry. She says she loves you, but we both know she enjoys making love with me." "Shut up, Andrew." "That's not true, Pete." Joan wailed. "Pete said I only love you." Apparently not enough to keep away from him. He mentioned something to Andrew. "I recall your tiny child struggling to get up after I punched him. Perhaps I should teach him another lesson for banging my wife." Do you want to take your best shot at me? Andrew threatened, I'm going to punch you to death in your own home in front of your wife. She want a bigger and better man. That's correct. Get dressed and meet me in the backyard. I don't want you unclothed. When the ambulance arrives, Andrew retrieved his pants. Pete laughed and pointed to his tool. Joan, you swapped me for the baby carrot. You may have preferred a taller man, but you did not receive one. Actually, Andrew was a little bigger, as Joan said, but no man enjoys being mocked for his size. Pete wanted Andrew to be angry. Pete left the room without waiting for them. Joan cried louder when she saw Andrew follow her husband. She lunged at Andrew, scratching his shoulders and back, but he backhanded her, slamming her into the headboard, stunning her. Pete rushed downstairs unaware that Joan had been struck. He didn't want his house demolished during the battle, so he inserted a mouthpiece and dashed into the backyard. Andrew followed closely. Andrew teased. I'm going to enjoy punching you, Pete. After that I'll screw Joanne beside the pool, while you watch Pete speak through the mouthpiece. I don't mind if you screw her. She no longer matters to me. This is to teach you not to mistreat married ladies. Andrew approached Pete in a boxing stand, believing that his longer reach would be advantageous. Pete noted Andrew's huge arms but flabby waist, which indicated inadequate cardio. Pete intended to tire him out for the surveillance cameras. Pete raised his hands to appear protective. Andrew ran in, throwing jabs and attempting to grab Pete, but he effortlessly dodged. Andrew was having difficulty breathing. After several failed efforts, finally, Andrew threw a large right-handed haymaker. Pete responded by hitting Andrew hard in the right kidney, causing him to collapse in pain. Pete then landed a powerful elbow on the same location, knocking Andrew to his knees. Pete waited for Andrew to stand, requiring him to seem as the aggressor for the recording. Andrew struggled, but ultimately stood up and attempted to box again. Pete enjoyed the sight and returned jabs to Andrew's wounded sides. Andrew felt apparent pain with each blow, realizing he couldn't win. Andrew attempted to attack Pete in intending to grasp him. Pete tripped him, then landed a crushing kick in the crotch while Andrew was on his hands and knees. Andrew yelled out and collapsed into a fetal posture. Paralyzed, Pete said, "Pity, who is the bear now? You're lucky. I didn't drown you in the pool." Back inside the house, Joan regained her composure, put on a robe and dialed 911, claiming her husband and boss were fighting. She dashed downstairs, grabbed her phone, but halted as she passed Pete's office. Pete sat down approximately 10 feet away, listening to Andrew whimper in pain. Normally he would have hated to watch someone suffer so horribly, but all he felt for Andrew was a feeling of justice. He waited for the police or ambulance to arrive, hoping Joan had contacted them. He wondered where she was. Joan burst out of the house brandishing a weapon. A black eye appeared as she aimed at it. Andrew yelled, "You will not hurt my husband. I will liquidate you." Pete jumped up to comfort her. "There is little chance of that happening," he murmured, holding her and pointing the rifle down. He gently took the firearm from her and placed it aside when the cops arrived. She was still repeating, "You won't hurt my hubby." The officer took the shells out of the gun and checked on Andrew. He coughed up blood, which surprised the officer, given that the only obvious marks were red sides and early bruises. He noticed Joan's black eye and said, "Are you okay?" She responded. She sobbed and pointed at Andrew. "He assaulted me. When my husband arrived, Andrew chased him." Pete was perplexed. "The officer advised you to go to the hospital so that the misuse could be documented. Can my hubby take me?" "Yes, but go as quickly as possible," the cop responded. He looked at Pete and said, "You look unscathed. Are you a black belt or something?" Pete shook his head. "Or something. I know how to defend myself and my family, but I'm far more damaged than you realize. Joan sobbed on Pete's shoulder, realizing she was the one who had injured him. Pete led her inside to get dressed for the hospital. She requested him to help her change, but he declined. She didn't want to view the bedroom, where she'd been with Andrew. Joan looked like she was 10 years old. Pete asked the police as they were leaving. "Can we get his car towed?" Joan does not need to see it. The officer agreed in the car. They traveled in silence until Joan whispered, "Speak to me." Pete yelled at me. "Scream at me. Call me 304 again, but let me know what you were thinking." Pete resumed driving after a minute. He said, "Assault. How are you going to go about assault? Everyone will know it was voluntary. I will not lie for you." Joan's face fell. "I'd like to use this to keep him away. He was excessively domineering, and I was going to leave him at the firm anyhow," she stated so. Pete said, "I've heard." She seemed astonished. Jo stated that just because she is short does not imply that she is not intelligent. "I understand." Pete replied. "I would ask why, but I am already aware. I apologize." She whispered. "The unfortunate part is that I would do virtually anything for you, but I can't undo what you've been holding against me for years. You should not have married me, Joan." Pete stated, "Please do not mention that I made a terrible mistake. We've got a beautiful family home and jobs." Joan begged that we had a lovely life, except for your reliance on taller, heavier males. Pete observed that hit hard. He said you should have considered all of these factors, and decided that an affair was not worth the risk. "I know I was stupid, but could you forgive me?" she asked. Peter shook his head. "Maybe someday, but not soon," he said. "So is there any chance we'll stay together?" she inquired. "No, that is not going to happen," he said. "But why?" Joan asked. "Why do you believe so?" How did Pete respond? "Due to the affair, we can seek counseling. We can conquer this," she suggested Joan. This was not just an affair. His kid emailed me a link to a cloud account containing videos of you and Andrew from Thursday and Friday. Pete explained. She gasped. "I'm not sure who set it up, Andrew or Ricky, regardless. I heard you won't have to worry about wearing heels around me again." It never disturbed her. She said, "I wish I knew that it always worried you." He said, "You won't have to worry about people, as assuming your short husband is an easy target." Do you still believe Ava made up the tale about Paris? Joan asked. Joan gave an almost imperceptible shake of her head. That says it all. Oh, and by the way, when Ricky sent me the link, he indicated that Andrew had consented to let him screw you too. No surprise, he acted as like he owned our backyard. He did not respect me or our marriage. Who was disrespectful at first? You did. Joan. Joan was upset when she realized she had disrespected Pete first. She was also outraged that Ricky thought he could make love with her. She finally knew why he had been sticking around so much, and she couldn't believe how far she had fallen. Pete, I don't know what to say, except that I apologize. Sorry is not enough. You lost faith and respect in me, despite the fact that I am a greater guy than him in every aspect. That wasn't enough for you, was it? Joan stared out the window, tears running down her cheeks. What happens now? She asked. I intend to send you divorce papers today. I'll hold off, depending on how the next several days progress. We are still getting divorced, but delivering you the paperwork on the day you were allegedly assaulted would not look good in court. He asked. So how are you going to pull off the assault? And what about the rifle? Do you intend to send an innocent guy to jail? I wanted to send him to the morgue, but you are just as guilty as he is. Joan considered jumping out of the moving automobile. There is nothing innocent about him. Just tell the cops. You covered me crying in the bedroom, and when Andrew saw you, he followed you. I'll manage the rest, so you won't have to lie. That is a falsehood. Pete stated. I was pleading with him to leave. The tears would have come quickly. I've got a black eye to show. Pete said he shot me and put his skin under my nails to show. I fought him off. And don't forget that your inner part is full of him. That will indicate that he assaulted you. Joan broke down sobbing. Pete questioned, why did you get the rifle? She said this while gathering her thoughts. Crazy things happened during fights. I was not going to let him injure you. I grabbed it unsure what the scene would be like when I got outside. Was this what you expected to see? They both knew the answer. Pete respected her effort to protect him, but she should have considered it 3 years ago. Pete contacted Brian a few minutes later while they were still in the car. Brian, this is Pete. Joan and I are on our way to the hospital. We urgently require the services of a competent attorney. I'll give you the specifics later today. Oh man, sorry to hear this. I will make a couple calls. Are you heading to Williamson Medical Center? Yes, we are okay. I'll make sure someone meets you there. Pete said don't talk to anyone until you've talked to your attorney. Thank you, Brian. He hung up and stared at Joan. You understood that, correct? This is a deadly game. Get your narrative right before you wind up in jail. I'm sure your children and family would love to pay you a visit in jail. Joan moaned internally about her plight. Perhaps she should leap out of the car after all. Brian mentioned that they met in the emergency room. Both the hospital administration and the senior legal counsel knew Brian personally. The attorney was also a distant relative. Their primary purpose was to guarantee Joan and Pete were seen immediately and not questioned until Brian's attorney arrived. When she did, the attorney soon realized what Joan was trying to do. They documented everything, including the duration of the affair, Ricky's involvement, video footage from Andrew's house and the Clark security system. Joan was ashamed, explaining everything to Pete, who was stunned. Joan was urged by her attorney to seek an out-of-court settlement in order to receive money and go on to another firm. She questioned whether the DA would prosecute, because the extended affair made it appear like sour grapes. Andrew would most likely prefer to avoid civil court and news about the strike received. Pete requested a moment alone with Joan. I do not care if the divorce settlement is 1,000 or 10 million. I want the house. Other assets are shared 50-50s, with the exception of my consultancy business, and there is no alimony. You may want to get as much as you can wait. You can keep the bed after today. That dirty item belongs to you. Joan recognized she'd be alone in this. You would fight me for the house, she stated. He responded. After what I've seen and done, you're asking what I'm willing to do. Imagine what I could accomplish with those videos. I have the contact information for all of your clients and many more. I could offer them videos of their advisor breaking oaths and making horrible decisions. How many would continue to work with you? Ask your sweetheart how angry I am if I only take the house. You got off easily. Every time he uttered lover. It felt like a hot poker. She could not refute it. Unwilling to battle Pete over the disaster she had made, she consented to take whatever she could from Andrew. After Andrew's surgeries, Joan received a payment. It took weeks of negotiating and a few more to collect the check, but it was enough to cover her for a couple of years if necessary. She soon found a job with Brian and Miriam's financial advisors. The compensation was lower than her previous employment, but it was with a huge global organization that offered opportunities. She moved into a 3-bedroom condo near her new employment, which provided space for the kids to visit. Despite her efforts to move on, she most likely disposed of the old bedroom set. The nights were awful, filled with numbness and sadness. She frequently called Pete crying before hanging up, realizing she could want therapy and assistance from her children and family. Her new position was aided by poaching some of her former clients from Andrew. This was simple because they liked her and wanted to leave Andrew's firm, especially since a reporter's photo request resulted in a full police report. The report detailed the incident at Pete's residence, emphasizing the spectacular components that made headlines. During his hospital stay, Andrew merely stated that it is a private affair, no comment. Andrew had many procedures to save his kidney, stabilize his rib, and partially reattach his testicle. There was optimism that he may one day achieve in hardness, but it would be uncomfortable and may necessitate additional surgery. Pete experienced the longest few weeks of his life. He remained on the road as much as possible. The ensuing months, including Thanksgiving, were difficult. He felt physically unwell on the day John moved out. His grandparents' deaths were less tragic than his family's dissolution. Ava had somewhat prepared for the circumstance. As a result of Ricky's statements, which later became true, she despised her mother for hurting her father and knew it would take time for their relationship to heal. Despite her indignation, she chose to support and forgive her mother. Eva prepared Donnie, so he wasn't taken completely by surprise. He was outraged because their mother was in his final semester at Georgia Tech. He kept out of the controversy and ignored her calls. The scenario had an impact on both children's academic performance. Pete pondered selling the house after the kids left, despite receiving it as part of the divorce settlement. The three sisters jumped in to attempt to cheer him up. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.